is outrageous and not humorous. The president does these sorts of things, goes off on wild tangents and says things that are clearly false.
I think President Trump, on behalf of the American people, is trying to negotiate a peace between Russia and Ukraine. 1 million people have died. And thankfully, we have a president with the guts to stand up on the world stage and try to end this thing. That's what I support.
To the extent that the White House said that Ukraine started the war, I disagree. I think Vladimir Putin started the war.
Welcome back to Power Play. U.S. President Donald Trump, as you can hear there, is taking aim at Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy in a blistering social media post, writing in part, "A modestly successful comedian, Vladimir Zelenskyy, talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into a war that couldn't be won, that never had to start, but a war that he, without the U.S. and Trump, will never be able to settle." The president goes on to say, "A dictator without elections, Zelenskyy better move fast or he is not going to have a country left. In the meantime, we are successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia, something all admit only Trump in the Trump administration can do." Zelenskyy is shooting back.
Unfortunately, he lives in this disinformation space.
Ukraine's president is accusing Trump of living in a Russian-made disinformation space and being played by Vladimir Putin. With us now is Hermitage Capital's Bill Browder. Mr. Browder is among President Putin's most wanted for exposing the scale of the Kremlin's corruption. He's the author of 2 best-selling books about Putin's Russia, Red Notice and Freezing Order. Hi, Mr. Browder. Good to have you back on the show. Thank you for making the time.
Great to be here.
How significant is it that Donald Trump is calling Vladimir Zelenskyy a dictator and not Vladimir Putin?
Well, I mean, this is like straight out of George Orwell. You know, white is black and black is white, and upside down is right side up. I mean, everything that he's said in these tweets and statements over the last couple of days are just the opposite. So he blamed the invasion on Zelenskyy when Putin invaded. He calls Zelenskyy a dictator when Putin is a dictator. It's kind of hard to even speak seriously about any of this stuff because it's just so against reality. And I think it does one thing that's particularly harming, which is that it kind of disqualifies Trump and the United States to be an impartial arbiter to end this war. That he can't end the war if he's taking sides in such a blatant and untrue way.
Yeah, I can hear sort of the exasperation in your voice, and I certainly do understand it. I think the difficulty is it's the president of the United States saying this, right? It's not some sort of offside political character that doesn't matter. The U.S. had played such a leading role, particularly in providing aid and saying that Vladimir Putin was the aggressor. Now that they're doing the opposite, what kind of vacuum does that create?
Well, I think that we have to prepare ourselves for the eventuality that the U.S. will cut off military aid for Ukraine. And I think we should also prepare ourselves for the eventuality that the U.S. will withdraw troops from NATO forces in Eastern Europe. I think those are the 2 things which Trump has threatened to do, which he's talked about doing. And based on all the stuff that we're seeing around this negotiation, that's what's going to happen. And so then the question becomes, what does Ukraine do and what does Europe do? And the United States provided about half of the military aid to Ukraine. Europe did the other half. And I think it's unrealistic to expect that Europe would double down on their military aid because they just don't have the money, they don't have the tax revenues to do that. But there is one possible silver lining to this whole story, which is that right after the war started, the Western governments, in particular European governments, froze $300 billion of Russian central bank reserves. And that money could be seized and used to fund Ukraine's war effort. And most of that money currently is sitting in Belgium. And so I think that as this story with Trump and Putin and Zelenskyy, as it continues to escalate and we continue to see these crazy things happening where there wasn't a political will to confiscate that money before, I think there will be that political will in Europe to confiscate that money now. And that would be the solution to this problem. That would then take Trump out of the equation. If he doesn't want to fund the war, then Putin can effectively fund the war because it's his money that will go towards funding that war. And that would be, I think, the sort of elegant solution to this whole crisis, which sort of self-created crisis, which Trump has created there.
What is your level of faith that that political will can coalesce around doing exactly what you laid out? Because we've spoken on a number of occasions about, sort of the disparate views, I should say, in Europe, right? They haven't all been on the exact same page. Do you think Trump's posture around Ukraine, the things that he's saying, what he is accusing Vladimir Zelenskyy of, do you think it's enough to force Europe to get on the same page about this?
Well, it's interesting. I was at the Munich Security Conference last weekend, and before Trump made any of these statements, or before Marco Rubio and his team went to Saudi Arabia, people were already pretty quickly converging on the same page because of J.D. Vance's speech in Munich and because of Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary's statements to European military leaders. And so, I mean, I think that in a certain way, the more outrageous Trump's statements are, the more likely it is that Europe will come to the same page in doing what's necessary to continue to support Ukraine. And so, I mean, it's sometimes these things have unexpected consequences, and I think that that's one possible, likely unexpected consequence.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Mr. Browder, thanks for your insights tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you.